Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another of the Overberg Geoscientists Group's Zoom presentations. This morning, I'd like to introduce Jean Malan. Some of you will have listened to him in a previous presentation that he talked about oil and gas exploration off our western and southeast coast and across in the conjugate setting off Argentina and South America. So Jean is a University of Stellenbosch graduate, so welcome Jean, and we look forward to your presentation. He is currently working as a senior geoscientist at Geotech Group in Leeds in the UK. His focus has been mostly, looking at the conjugate between South America and Africa and looking for oil and gas deposits. His background is quite extensive. He was with the New African, or has been with the New African Global Energy Fund in London and Johannesburg. He had time with Petra South Africa in Cape Town. He worked with Sasol Petroleum International in Johannesburg, Namcor in Windhoek, and Sucor in Cape Town, where he actually started his career as a petroleum geologist in the 1980s. Prior to that, he was a field geologist for the Council of Geoscience in the Cape Town office, and he's worked extensively on the geology, in the southern parts of South Africa, obviously with his emphasis on oil and gas deposits. So we look forward to your presentation today on the shale gas geology and opportunities. Jean, thanks very much.
Thanks for that quick introduction, guys. Let's get going. And what I really aim to cover, and you can see quite a few bullets there. Let's introduce shale gas, the what and the where, and definitely there's a bit of history running along the Karoo, more so gas than oil, and then introduction of Karoo geology, hectare shale specifically, our seismic and well and other data available, and then clearly the dolerites play a role. Essential to petroleum and shale gas is the source rock potential, the story, and following that is basin modeling, maturity, and then we've got to step outside the Karoo, and let me just take you through what's happening in the US, specific with hydraulic fracturing or fracking, and that will lead us into a bit of on the groundwater environment issue. And we've got to finish off with the possible gas volumes out there, and the numbers, the spread of numbers, including my own. Got to touch base on the economics of all of this, and then government has got a role to play on regulations, and then something on the way forward. Just a word before I kick off further is part of this presentation really comes, well, most of it when I was with New Age, and New Age was setting up a partnership with Falkland Oil and Gas, and that is for the license area. That was a technical cooperation license over the Beaufort West towards Graafrenet area. So that's the Falcon acreage. I'll show you some of that data. And then lastly, with GTEC, we were involved with the Petroleum Agency South Africa, and I made proposal for them for a couple of Karoo studies, specifically related to how to map some of this, what is basement, what is depth to the whitetail, the source, and as well as the volcanics, the dolerite issues. What is shale gas? And then on the lower left, conventional oil and gas in pools dealing with a source and a trap and a seal. Shale gas is definitely different because in a way you're looking at the shale containing both, acting both as reservoir as well as the source, as well as in a way the seal. But shale gas, at least 80% or more is methane, and it's trapped in low porosity, as I previously said, organic rich shales and fine grained sedimentary rocks. And then on the right, These gas are normally stored as free gas, so that's intergranular, as well as absorbed gas when it clings or stuck to the surface of the clay and the organic matter. And then it could also be associated with water or oil in the reservoir. These low permeable shales, as this little schematic shows, requires fractures, either natural fractures or then induced. It does require a cap, and in many cases these shale bands are quite thin and extensive, and we'll touch base on that later. So a shale gas system, it's a self-contained source reservoir, and the shales that generate the gas also function as the low matrix permeability and low porosity reservoir rocks. Right, where's the shale gas? And up top left, really spread throughout the world. USA, really extensive over Russia, and then Mexico, the South Americas, really all over. Bottom left is a dozen, 15 or so basins in the UNS with plenty of resources in there. But then I've lifted this up for us, and you can clearly see where a couple of years ago, US energy information, and you can search it on Wall Street Journal, etc. South Africa was definitely featured as within the top 5 when it comes to shale gas reserves. And in this case, we're looking at trillion cubic feet. So that's these abbreviations you see, TCF. And again, going back to the US, we were looking, and you can see the big numbers there. That's anything between 500 and 1,000 TCF. So plenty, and spread through numerous basins, and mostly in older geology, like we are dealing here with Permian, Carboniferous, etc. So again, just a TCF, we can get plenty of electricity from it. It can heat many houses, and then for the US, 12 million natural gas-fired vehicles, or then battery-powered. Right. Past indications of the group. In 1968, Sucor drilled a well near Cronenmere in the Eastern Cape. It had a gas blowout, and written in the well completion report, when they penetrated the shale, they actually took such a kick from the gas that they had to activate the blowout preventers. That's the BOPs. And the gas flowed to surface, and so the project manager said, an incredible, exciting and encouraging prospect for Cronenmere. I'll show you the well later and locations. And then in the 60s, while they were taking the Orange Fish River through the Seaback Mountains, they came across these pockets of methane, and an underground fire lasted for months. And then in the past 30 years at Louriesfontein, there's just gas that keeps escaping from where the White Hill is about a couple of 100 meters underneath the surface. After this farmer drilled through a dolerite sill. And then as recent as 8 years ago, the Cape Times reported and said when Sucor drilled for oil in the Karoo, they left many holes behind. I'll show you them. And then last week, this farmer of Merweville opened one of these, and gas flowed out, and then it was followed by water, and then he set this gas alight. Another very interesting aspect that is known, and it's been known for many years, and this is between Beaufort West and Sutherland and Fraserburg up there, is these pyrobitumen filled fractures, and it is noted as likely as the source is oil from the White Hill in its previous past, and it worked its way up these fissures, as this old sketch by Rousseau shows. That's just a modern day photo when they were actually taking mining these fissures and saw it more as coal or pseudo coal. Right, the Karoo and a story on the Eka. So we're focusing on the lower Eka, and age-wise 280 to 270, and we started off during the Permian with a deep water basin, and I refer it to as the Eka Sea, and that was infill with carbonaceous material with potential source rock, and then in yellow covered by these prograding turbidites and shelf material, and later on the deltas. It is extensive. It's in South America. It gets across into across the Falklands. So just the thin little black line is as Forer duck coal, shows the White Hill, which is seen as the main source. The White Hill Formation across the Karoo, and there's clips of it in specifically in the Hoa Basin, and as well as over in the Paraná. So what I say here is, coming back to the deep water setting, is it had these aquatic reptiles. So here's Mesosaurus, and that's a photo I took outside Kitmans, and that's a museum example. But abundance of carbonaceous material, there's a lack of bioturbation, referring to anoxia, so and reducing water bottom conditions. That is what Birger Olofse quotes for depths, where he envisaged his reptile with the Mesosaurus, but I say perfect conditions for source, and not only the Karoo, where the White Hill is 30 up to 50 meters, but across Gondwana at that stage. Excuse me. Now, for the introduction, just the Karoo Shale, and that's really what we're focusing on, the lower Eka. And that's just an aerial view, just west of southwest of Laingsburg. And I've clipped off the Prince Albert, which is just to the south, but we move from the White Hill into the Collingham and then into the Fishkill. And our focus would really be between the Prince Albert, White Hill, and Collingham. And as you can see on this litho representation, Shale, getting silty and then more sandy as you progress. So coming back to what the guys noted in the 60s and before that is, I believe the Karoo Shale or the White Hill is a known petroleum system. It's dry gas. It's mainly methane, and it can come from several strat levels. I'll show you that. What is quite keen, it's got low CO2 and HO2. Right. A quick snap of outcrops, and again in the Laingsburg, Maatjiesfontein, Louriesfontein. So just this whitish portion is actually the White Hill, and then sitting above it is the Collingham with the Maatjiesfontein chert. But we are focused 30 to 50 meter outcrop of well laminated black carbonaceous shales. You find these dolomite concretions. I mean, that's just a zoom into those when you walk to the outcrop, as well as these smaller ones. So abundance of carbon and lack of bioturbation imply, yes, this anoxic, and it's a perfect conditions for source. And if you look at the source rock statistics, total organic carbon, and that's TOC on this scale, running from 0 to 15, and this is for a specific location well. On average, the Karoo shows 4.5. In this case, it gets as high as 15. Colon and then quote even higher numbers. So TOC, we tick the box. Hydrocarbon index, again, it's the graph on the right. You can see it for the white heel, it's in the high number. Right, we'll look at the type later on, but it is derived type of kerogen, points to algae and bacterial. It's not only the white heel, but also the adjacent, the lower Prince Albert and the overlying Collingham. And I've got the snap of that's the field outcrop of both of them. In the foreground, Prince Albert, and again, there's the white heel. And we're going to the Collingham. The thickness of those, they are also deep carbonaceous, deep water shales. And again, their TOCs is enough to be viewed as having potential. Specifically, here's an example of the Prince Albert getting as high as 8 to 12% TOCs. However, interesting to note, the HIs as low as in the order of 50 to 100. Where and the extent of specifically the white heel, and that's a very early map of Anderson and McMillan, and we can see it following the southern margin, the western margin, and then off to Kimberley. White sticker here, it's pretty much, you can see it clearly shown on this diagram or this photo. It's a lower dip nearly, and we follow from the Prince Albert, the white heel, nicely exposed outcrops, Collingham fish scale. So steeply dipping along the Cape Fold belt and then opening up. What is definitely well known is there is a northern limit to the white band or the white heel. What's cropping up here as well, and that's in the red stipple, we'll get back to that soon, is the limit, the southern limit of the dolerites. Right. Stepping back into data, there's 11 deep wells that's been drilled. Pretty much the focus was in the 60s, and there's about 3,000 kilometers of 2D seismics also acquired in the 60s. I must say the good thing is most of these wells lie on seismic. I'll show you just now, so we can interpret key horizons. Gas was encountered in 4 of those wells, and I've put them there in red for us, red circles, and then there was a test done in Cranemere as well. So this Cranemere borehole, essentially, I've got a detailed log for us with specifically the gamma on the left and the different panels. But what I'd like just to, with time short, is the well was TD'd way in the Table Mountain, so the depth of 4,660 odd meters. So it went through the full succession. In Bokkenveld, Dwyka, Whiteheel, Fort Brown. What I show for us is the gas shows in Cranemere 1. So in red, in this red vertical, is all these indications of gas, the presence of gas in this well. There was a kick, so much so, I'll show you later on the excitement when this kick happened. But in short, they went back and they drilled, they did try to do drill stem tests, of which they had one successful one. And this is pretty much a summary of the drill stem test done within the Cranemere well. So on the panel on the left is the number of tests, all in all 11 or so. What I'd like to focus on is this test 3.3AB, which followed on this gas kick they had at 8,300 feet. What's that again in meters? 2,500 meters. Right. So gas flowed from, and I'm quoting this from the carbonaceous Fort Brown shale. We're up here. The gas is probably in situ. And they mentioned porosity, permeabilities. The interesting aspect is they managed to get a flow rate of 1.8 million scuffs, and it was flared, and they had a test period of nearly a day. But there was a decline, and it's also mentioned in here. You can see the depletion rate down. They've estimated that this pocket of gas could well be in the order of about 9 million cubic scuffs. So going straight to the well completion report, and I've just copied that. So that's that DSD test. Noted largest accumulation of natural gas yet discovered. Hydrocarbon gas can be generated and stored in Karoo sediments. The source of the gas, it's likely the host is the carbonate Fort Brown. It probably both source rock and reservoirs. So, yeah, a precursor to the whole shale gas story in a way. The Klein Water, which is southeast of Laingsburg, that went down to 5.5 kilometers. It stopped in the Dwika. Lesser activity on shows, so no DSTs, but a good confirmation of the White Hill source rock down there. And again, the schematic gives a good indication of how where the White Hill sits in relation to the lower Eka. We do encroach the Cape Fold Belt with additional deformation, which I'll show you just now. So source rocks between 4,300 and 5,180 meters. And again, just the well summary notes and the DSTs, fluorescence recorded. There is presence of gas and oil noted, all low perm, specifically these lower DSTs. It was referred to as in situ gas, and they quoted as a BCGA, and that's really, it's at times a buzzword as well, basin-centered gas accumulations. I believe that's something that PetroSA are still sitting with in the deepest part of the Bristow Basin. Plenty of gas there, but okay, that's another story. Right, gas indications, we looked at KW1, and so what I've plotted for us is just these little bars is where gas were encountered in KW1 and Cronemeer, a suite of gas intersections, and where they attempted the test, where the successful test was done. CS, more in the Eastern Capes, a sniff of gas, and then SA, which you'll later see a couple of shows. Interesting to note is these shows occur throughout the section. I mean, there is a show down in Bokkeveld, and there are shows up in the lower Beaufort. So these tight gas shows is not linked to a specific geological unit. Is it fracture driven? Is there something else that drive it? I believe it points to an abundant source rock, the abundant source rock nature of these rocks, or then, you know, the lower Eka. This is a west-east line, and we're in the Eastern Cape, and it goes through Cronemeer, and I've put the well on there for us, as well as the horizon pics. So you can see this late 60s vintage. It's fair quality. You can definitely map on it, and you can see the top of the White Hill would be picked here, and that's pretty much the Dwika. This white image, the rest is more transparent, but another good pick is, as indicated there, the base of the Cape supergroup. Just depths, there you are. That gives you a feeling on we're down at about 4 kilometer in this vicinity. And again, the spread of gas in Cronemeer. That is just zooming in. We're now looking at the south to north direction. And I really wanted to see if there's a bit of more detail that could pick up once you zoom into the seismic. This is workstation seismic we looked at with Falcon. The well logs are shown there, and again the presence of gas, but it's probably difficult to try and put further interpretation. Definitely in sequence strat analysis, even faults become a problem, right? And again, the reminder where that test occurred. We step to Klein Waterval, or KW167 well, and that's its position, closer to the fold belt. Depth here again, down to 4.5 kilometers in this case, gas shows an interesting thickening that we see happening in the Wittenberg Bokkenveld. But please do note we're encroaching the Cape Fold Belt, so duplication of that. And yes, what has really been of interest to me is you see the nice anticline running there, so forming a trap. And in the other direction, right, I'm going to show you a line that goes through this position, and this is a line in the public domain by Scheiber and Enslen and their interpretation, and we more or less clipping this line in this position. So a four-way closure for the lower Eka. Just wanted to show you these guys did manage to put a structural interpretation to this. Right. Another good guide on where to find and how to find the whitetail is these magnetotelluric profiles, where electrical resistivity data shows up, and in this case low resistivity, that's red and yellow, which is an indication of high conductivity, and it points to, and it's caused by the carbonate-rich whitetail. For that, we've got a couple of well penetrations, but definitely well imaged and clearly defined. And again, there's our depth in both directions. That's the long section out here, and then we've got a shorter section here close to Cronemere or Janssenville in the Eastern Cape. Dolerites, a quick one. So sills and dikes present throughout the whole section of the Karoo Basin. We know ties back to early Jurassic. Interesting that Swenson says that 80% of sills are less than 30 meters thick, and it's well spaced, specifically when you start dealing with the western part. Do note that the southern portion, it's absent of dolerites. Here is a transect, a prime, and we can follow the Prince Albert and Whitehall in blue through and a schematic of how the dolerites could show. There was a specific with three wells that were looked at, and in this case 2 new drill wells, KFZ in the Tankwa and KWV just along the east coast. And in the case of KFZ, where there was a duplication of the Whitehall because of thrusts, however, no dolerites, no volcanics. And in the case of KWV, it went down to 2,300 meters, quite a few of these popping up. And then they had the benefit of an old goldfields well drilled near Philippopolis in the Karoo. And although the Whitehall wasn't exactly identifiable, they could place a sequence, probably Prince Albert, Collingham, Whitehall down here. But do note the amount of dolerite. Right, shale source rock. That's what we've got to quickly just snap onto back. So the Whitehall, a TOC, in industry standard, when you speak about the source rock with a TOC of more than 2%, people get excited. I mean, you look at Kimmeridge source, etc., and I mean our own offshore source that Sukkot chases, it's in the order of 2-4%. In the case of the whitetail, it averaged 4.5, it gets up to 18.5%. Organic sulfur, which you need a good content of well because it's an initial component of your bacterial material. So again, anything above 1% is industry norm. In the case of the whitetail, and there you are, so that is the boxes, and it gets up to 6 to 8. The Prince Albert, previously mentioned, TOC up to 12%. And same numbers in a way reflected on our plot on the left, TOC going up to 12, and then S in yellow going up to 4. Stepping back to vitrinite reflectance, that's a measure of thermal maturity, and it's really based on light reflected from polished vitrinite sections. It's used in the coal industry. There you can see the coal ranking, but also very useful for oil and gas. And in the case of gas, the gas window kicks in or is present from a VR2 and higher to about 3.5%. It gets over mature. The Karoo, and I've plotted, there's some plots here. The VR gets in the order of, there's 4% for whitetail and 4% for Collingham, and you can see it's dry gas. Right, we've got to run along here. These plots really again point to those formations, Prince Albert whitetail. We're looking at over mature when we looked at T-maxes. Types, Prince Albert is more plant woody, and the whitetail Collingham is more alga and bacterial. Not going to spend time on this, but I used the good work of Tinker, where she also used the old Sukor wells to tell us how much of denudation, uplift, erosion, etc. Essentially to help me find and make sense when we did our basin model, and how much of that section has been eroded through time. So we're looking at Dwika in black, modeled through time, and then whitetail Collingham, Prince Albert is this section running through time, and present day surface. So what we can see here from vitrinite reflectance data, and that is from the SA1 well, is the top measurement is as high as 2%. It gets down to 5%. Remember, earlier we were saying, there you are, 2% is wet gas, a dry gas comes in. So really in the gas, and that's present day at surface. This has all been taken away through many stages of erosion, etc. Interesting to show as well is the maturity, that's 200 degrees C. Right. Hydraulic fracturing, a couple of quick slides. So it's a simulation technique to get additional permeability through fractures that allows the gas to flow to surface. So you follow your shale bed and you have these multilateral completions going in all directions. This is US examples. They've been fracking over 1 million times in the US, 90% of wells, and you can see the number of wells that's been fracked there yearly, not only for oil, shale, or shale gas, but also in the traditional oil industry offshore. So 60 to 80% of all wells required fracking. You can see the number of resource recovered, gas, a number of oil, but it's I believe a proven and a safe induced practice. The good thing that we learned from the Eka shales is when we examine the cores, there's a high quartz contents, and that gives us a sufficient brittleness that would suit fracturing. Pushing for time, I mean, fracturing, that's once you've drilled a well, you would go back and you would induce these fractures, and you would pump in a fracturing fluid, and this happens with a pumper truck, high pressures, and you open up the fractures, the fissures, and you fill them with this hydraulic fluid. Okay, you do require a fair bit of water. I'll look at that just now, but those call it cracks, those fissures remain open, and that frees the gas to come to surface. It's quite a busy operation, and that's an example during such a fracking for the Marcellus Shale. So during fracking, you can see the water tankers lining up. There's one at the back, and then there's the pumper-specific tracks and sitting over the well. And as you recover, there's pits surrounding this and a treatment plant. But once you've got the gas flowing, you've got pretty much a quiet setting with wellhead, a bit of storage, and it links to infrastructure. During operation, nothing different than a traditional well site, and that's a rig and an operation happening a day, and that's an operation at night. The challenge so far, well, with shale gas in the USA is how to maintain production, because and for this I give you an example. We look at cumulative production, that's in blue on the left, and that gives you an idea how much is being produced. However, the estimated production decline and the green curve shows you what happens within the first year. You drop from over 7,000 scuffs per day down to, by the end of the second year, to 1,000. So that is a dramatic drop, as much as 60 to 80% over the first couple of years. Now, the way to deal with that is to keep on drilling. So you just drop down one well after the other well to maintain your plateau of production. In this case, you can see over here and the number of new wells. And here's just an example of as many as 35 wells that goes down per year to keep making up and adding new well profiles. Water needs. This is a water need for drilling and fracturing, showing quite a few basins and shales. And so to drill it and frack a single well between 200 and 400 water tankers, I mean, there is in cubic meters the numbers mentioned. You can look at that later. So the component to drill and then the component to frack. This is pretty much back in the US again. You can see still a rig in operation here, but once things are left in idle, there's another rig going. It's pretty much quiet country, but just imagine if that's spread all over the Karoo. It's definitely it's a different picture to look at if you see that and you put it in the Karoo context. Right. Let's look at prospective shale gases. Where in the Karoo might we see these gas? And what I show you here, and this is in brown, it's the shale gas based on vitrinite reflectance of 3 and higher. And remember, 3.5, 3.5 was getting into gas, dry gas. So even including that, this is this brown without the hatch. We're looking at this swath, yeah, pretty much in the southern Karoo. It gets too deep over here, and then it just gets too shallow for fracking. But that is one picture to consider. This is work I've been involved with, and that's a Falkland oil example. And again, that's Graaf-Reinet and with that same polygon, as well as depths. And you can see depths between 2,000 and 4,500 meters out here. Shale thickness of 30 meters and a TOC of 4.5. And this is the latest, which comes from Council Geoscience. So we focus on that same area. And there you can see the size of it. Right. Shale gas resources in numbers. In place, 1.6 billion TCF, or 16,000 TCF. Recoverable, in this case, about 20-25%, 370 TCF. And this is an evaluation by Advanced Resources. You can look at the detail. They've evaluated all 3 units, Prince Albert, Whitehill, Collingham. PetroSA on their website quote a number between 485 in place, recoverable 30 TCF. Council Geoscience, they add Prince Albert and Whitehill together and they come to 72. There's the Karoo Research Initiative, and their numbers that show up is also, it remains in the high numbers. I've got a calculation that you can look at later on here. I see it at about 18. To put that in perspective, is the Moss gas, that is the FA offshore gas field that supply gas to the PetroSA gas to liquid facility onshore. That was sanctioned on 1 TCF. And here we're looking at numbers in the order of magnitude larger. Right, how does Karoo numbers Whitehill compared to Barnett and Marcella? That's the US classics. Just quickly, without looking at detail, if you just look at porosities, we up there. Vitrinite, yes, okay, that's higher values that they see. T-maxes, that's just barely high. TOCs, we right there, the Whitehill is in those numbers. The types are there. Sizes, okay, thicknesses, but these TCF numbers up there. So a word on licenses. Interest in the Karoo was kicked off following the US shale gas industry when it exploded. And licenses, TCP's cooperation permits was signed with Falcon and with the Shell. The Sasol Chesapeake Statoil venture was up here, and then Bundu. A moratorium was declared over the southern and mid regions, and they were further exemptions were put on it. Shell pulled out its team; it still got its license. Sasol and Chesapeake terminated their position. By the way, Chesapeake, one of the big players in the US, they've just gotten bust. They're no longer a player in the US, and we know Sasol has got its own financial challenges. Okay, then from regulatory side, work programs do not include fracking for the first 3 years, and a moratorium on any new licenses remain in place. We know what we need for investment is an attractive gas price and likely a revisit of the upstream petroleum bill. 3 more slides, just in summary. I believe, okay, this is the Council of Geoscience assessment. So they've got a Karoo deep drilling project coming to look at this looming Karoo, and it's quoted from their website, looming shale gas exploration coming up. So just outside Beaufort West, the site is being selected. It's in the sweet spot. And to do a baseline study to drill a deep borehole, 3,500 meters, monitoring wells, and then do the result analysis. So that's for 5 years, and you can see the website. My concern straight away is you've got to go back to basics, guys. Look at what there is from seismic, from your other geophysical inputs, etc. Because before you go and position a well. But this well will also look at water, etc. Shale gas economics is based on US. A single Karoo well could cost between 5 and 7 million. So they're about 100 million, 150 million rands. A development is in the order of 2 to 3 billion. a pilot project should take 5 to 8 years. Although we out of infrastructure, I'll just show you now. I mean, this sweet spot is perfectly positioned to help with getting our power shortage resolved. Shale gas, I believe, can really be used to firm or to kick in when the sun goes down and the wind stops. It's a reliable 24-hour a day throughout the year, and the gas price could be quite competitive because it's a gas to power price that you link to Eskom. And it is, when you look at US prices, down in the order of $2.5 per thousand scuffs. In this case, it relates to $7 to $10. It could be quite cost effective, because if you look at one of the last solar plants that goes down, for 100 megawatt, they've got to put down 16 billion to get such a plant up and running. Right. Gas to power. Quick solution. You look at these type of units, they are well used throughout the world. This is an example from Australia where they use surplus gas. These are modular gas turbine generators, each of them 5 megawatts. You just plug them into gas on the one side. On the other side, they kick out power for you. So 10 of them gives you 52 hours solar. Runs at about 100 megawatt stations. Wind is in the order of 50 to 100. So you get right in with the other, and you are adding to the Eskom grid. It's a small, compact footprint. These units, the last Australian mobilization, within a month to 3 months, it's tied up and you've got it going. So unlike wind and solar, it's continuous and it's attractive economics. And I've just on my map on the left, I've dropped the sweet spot area on the Eskom grid, and more than enough tying points. Summary slides. The whitetail shales, it's a noxic environment, so it's good for source. It became more lacustrine towards the top. I mean, whitetail is rich in TOC, favorable source mention. The petrophysical, it tells us that the brittleness, it can facilitate hydraulic fracturing. I believe the whitetail is a suitable shale. And then let's await the Council of Geoscience borehole. So lastly, in summary from the whitetail is a favorable target, and we've got the supporting Prince Albert Collingham. It remains highly speculative because we lack geophysical data and proper geochemical. The risk is there is this over-mature issue. However, we've seen large numbers, gas in place numbers in the order of 30 to 485 TCF. There's a resource estimate, so that's what you could recover, and 13 to 50. And everybody's probably leaning towards the lower one because of the current disparity of data. The fact is, shale gas is so much more cleaner burner than coal, and I believe it is a potential resource. However, it needs a fair bit of work, solid geoscience to be done. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jean. That was excellent, and I'm sure it'll raise some discussion, particularly after your pictures of what a drilling field looks like in the States. Okay, Gert, are you going to open us up?
Anybody who wishes to ask a question, just press down your space bar or open your mic and you can ask questions. Why don't you unshare your screen, Jean, and then put up your video.
I'll do that for you just now. Stop sharing, stop share for you. Is that it?
Yes, good, thank you.
And I'll put my video on. You cannot, yes, video, you need to switch my video on, please.
Yes, I just have.
Start my video. There you are.
Okay, Gert, you're going to run the hands and keep the process moving.
Well, anybody who wants to ask a question, go ahead, unless you can also put up your hand. If you click on the participants, there's a little opportunity to put up a hand. Anybody now, press down your space bar and ask a question.
Okay, maybe I can just get the process going. I mean, we've now had a couple of talks on energy, effectively, I guess, clean energy. We had Charles Mostert and a contribution from Jock Harmer on solar and the developments going on in that field. We haven't yet touched on wind energy, but we all know about it, and there are a lot of wind stations around the country. And now we've had this presentation, so we have a good cross-section of potential future opportunities, or existing and future opportunities to discuss. So look forward to comment from particularly people like Charles and Jock.
I see Peter van der Spey, you opened your mic. You want to ask a question? Otherwise,
I'm busy thinking. My question is for a 5 megawatt, as an example, for a 5 megawatt producing facility on the White Hill, say between Beaufort West and Langsberg, approximately what would be the aerial dimensions of the operating site with its associated wells in square kilometers?
On the slide that I showed to you, they give a number of 1.5 hectares if you put down 10 of these units, and according to their assessment, it would be about a quarter of the size of a solar or a wind farm. So it still has a footprint that needs to sit there, but it's substantially smaller.
Okay.
Charles, you had a question?
Yes, thank you very much. John, thank you very much for a well-prepared presentation. It was certainly very educational. Question from my end: has any water studies being done on the Karoo Basin for the supply of water?
I mean, maybe we can have a help from any other guys that's got experience of this, but my understanding is there's definitely been, I mean, the Karoo aquifer, I believe, is well understood. We know it is shallow, and in the case of our Whiteheel and the Whiteheel targets, we would be looking at a depth of 3,500 meters, so well deeper than the aquifer. However, we need the water to run these operations. So either this water can come from, as during the drilling operation, deeper, salty water. And we know how salty the water is associated when it's Bockerveld and etc. That could be a potential source. The one thing that I did not mention is there is alternatives to reduce that water consumption dramatically, and the one is with a type of different well gel and fluid. It's just the cost aspect goes up. Something else as well is the water that's been retrieved again gets retreated, and you can recover 95% of that water. And that's about my understanding of the water. But surely it is a challenge, and I believe it's part of what the Geological Council will address, because in their proposal you'll see they're also drilling quite a few wells down to 700 meters, as well as a couple of other monitoring wells down to 150 meters. So that's in short my understanding.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
John, going back to that, and it's John Bristow, and then I think there's a question going around on the chat group from Bernard. He's got a question to you, but you would still then have to go through that sort of ongoing drilling program to establish the well and then sustain the wells. And I mean, obviously, you know, I guess the picture you showed is what typically will upset Karoo farmers and conservationists.
John, my understanding, okay, I mean, that was probably
the in the hot seat. Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably the extreme coming from the US. In the case of a Karoo venture, we would have the initial well pad. I've showed you that one picture where from one location you go and do all the other subverticals that follows the Whitehill. So you should be able to do numerous completions going in many multi-directions from one location.
Yeah.
However, you'd have to keep on adding and drilling as that one well dies, and you've got to replace it with the next one to at least maintain a reasonable production rate to keep those turbines spinning, so to say.
Yeah.
John, there's a question from Stefano Marani. Based on your best estimates of decline curves, what do you think cost per MCF would amount to over the life of the well?
Yes, what's not mentioned in that 100 to 150 million rands is sorry, in the development field project, I didn't pick up how this replacement well works in. But if you look at the cost of what one well is, and I mean, the big cost goes into getting yourself down to the Whitehill, down to 3,500 meters. Once you start doing the laterals and your equipment is in place, I believe that cost would probably drop. I'm just taking a guess, maybe half, maybe a third. But still, you're looking in the order of 25 to 30 million rands per well. And if we look at the order of maybe 10 such wells a year, I mean, you can quickly add up the number. And that is probably ultimately coming closer to the type of build costs I could pick up for instance, for solar. So that's a very valid point. And please, I think even more so, we should remember these numbers are based on US numbers. They've got the infrastructure, they've got the equipment, they've got everything sitting out there. We've got to bring things in, or we've got to develop an industry. So yeah, cost got to be added.
Okay. We need input from Bastian. Are you still there, Bastian? I mean, you've put up one of your publications and a link. Can we have some of your comment on what Jean's talked about?
I've sent that paper because I was trying to show that maybe there is two different reservoirs, not just at the Whitehill, also where people have found the gas, as Jean has shown, that was much higher. But from the discussion, I'm feeling like probably if this has to be done, there would be no one in South Africa who's going to be able to drill. And maybe, I mean, if this has to happen, how would you teach the young how to drill or look at well log? I've been with a few in the core shed to look at some of this core, but I think there's not many of us who know how to log a core and take notes. And all the students I've been with, I'm sure none of them have been on a drilling rig. So I think that's a challenge that I would have liked to ask how Jean see this going forward in terms of having the young involved, the South African.
Bastian, I can just put myself in the picture when I was young, in my early 30s, when I joined the oil industry with Sukor, and I mean, training happened on site, and at that stage, Sukor, even in the difficult sanction years, managed to get all of us trained up and experienced both. What we've got currently at between Petro SA as well as the Petroleum Agency and Tullow, Cape Town, which just had to close their office 6 months ago, is you have guys in the ages of 45 and older, like myself, who has got logging experience, interpretation experience, studying of core experience, and I see that as a good collaboration between the olders and the universities like yourself and the upcoming. So yes, a big challenge, but I believe an exciting challenge. Should that happen, where the young generation can really take this as it becoming their industry and their domain to be the experts in.
Okay, there you are, Bastian. You've got an offer from Jean. He's coming back to live in, Claremont, so get him involved in your, educating and helping educate some of your great young people.
Jean, changing tack a little bit. Ultimately, it's a fossil fuel. It's a CO2 emitter. So if we're talking optimistically 8, probably realistically 15 years before something like this comes on stream, do you not think it will be so completely out of phase where things are in the world? I mean, a colleague of mine is a company we're putting together a coal to power project in Tanzania. Had a hassles, finally got approval, and when they went to market, they had to redesign the operation to lower the carbon footprint. In other words, their plan had to include a certain amount of solar power on the power station in order to reduce the size of the output from the CO2 output from the coal mine. Now that's for an international funder. That's now. In 8 to 10 years, it's going to be even more onerous, and it just seems, I think, out of phase to push this as a solution to the power problems, rather than the solar and wind, which has been shown to be viable in South Africa. It's not the technology or anything, or even funding, that's holding it back. It's just government regulation. So if they just open the door, I think that's a better path for the future than in starting something new. And we haven't even spoken about the environmental things.
No, Jock, surely you've got a valid point. You're talking about solar and wind. I can just refer you straight to Eskom, and Eskom runs these facilities. And if you dig in there and you see the uptime that they manage to achieve with these, that they've been operating and running for some time, it's less than 40%. So even if such a facility tell you, I can give you 100 megawatts, it never ever, on average in the year, gets close to that. So let's not be, it is, we've got to have the balance going. It's got to be the correct balance. And should Karoo Shale, indeed, if there's a reserve, it's very speculative, as I even see it now, and we need it properly evaluated from a geoscience. However, if there is indeed a way that this gas can be utilized to generate power, it would, as I think it could be used like peak, assisting pretty much like hydro, or assist the sun when it's cloudy, or the wind when it stops blowing. So that's my thinking, just off the top here.
Yeah, Jean, things have moved on from there. I mean, if the technology and the solar, the captured solar, concentrated solar system in the time that we've been building these units are such that there's heat storage in these plants for over 12 hours. In other words, the solar thing can run 24 hours. And, you know, these units are not managed by Eskom. Eskom just buys the power.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I just think if we had a deep history and we were sure of the resources, the reserves, truly sensu stricto, of this shale gas, and the technologies were clean now, I think it might be viable. But, you know, by the time it comes off, and I'm impressed by your confidence that the Council for Geoscience is going to be able to validate this whole lot.
Yeah. Okay. Good points, Bastian. Have you got any inputs? I mean, you also been very active in the shale gas research.
Sorry, me? I've already given my comments, but from what has been told is I think we still have to learn how to drill, to look for water. I think water is going to be an important problem in the Karoo, and I think that's why the council is drilling this deep hole. I think it's also for water, if I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right, anyone else? Thanks, Jock. Good points. You know, and I guess you know, the one huge elephant in the room will obviously always be the environmentalists, and I guess we should have had a few of them along in the discussion as well.
Charles has raised his hand. Charles?
Charles, yeah, there he is.
Thank you, John. One more question. We have quite a number of old abandoned mines or deep shafts nearing the end of their lifetime. I think particularly methane in the Free State. Would any of these old mines, have they been tested for a source of shale gas, a viable source?
I mean, the Petroleum Agency, PASA, if you look at their map of activities across South Africa, but specifically the onshore, you will see many a license that's been either under study or been awarded to look at methane or similar projects. There is a very successful methane helium project that runs commercially close to Welkom. And I mean, the buses or the transport for the mines and the buses runs with the methane that comes from this, that's released from the old mine shafts and drilling around the facilities. But the more exciting thing for this company specific is the helium, because they could really fill in this gap that could be created in the shortage of global helium. So
yeah, I mean, that's Renogen, Charles. I mean, that's, and you'll know, John. I mean, if anyone's interested, you should look at their website. They're doing some really interesting work. And for interest, the old Star Diamond Mine near Kroonstad in the Eastern Free State, you know, that mine had to have specially designed extractor fans to keep the mine clean of helium gas. You know, the actual mine had a positive pressure of helium coming into it, so you had to pull it out as quickly as you could. Okay.
John, there was on one of your slides, you showed a big potential gas field in Siberia. Is that being exploited at the moment?
That must have been in one of the initial slides. No, that was really just an indication where potential basins suitable for shale gas or oil is located. No, nothing more than that.
Any idea what is the projected lifetime of fracking in the United States?
I mean, currently, I mentioned a company that's gone under at a gas price of $2.50 per thousand cubic feet. These guys are struggling. They are seriously struggling. I had a slide showing the break even on on many of these ventures, and it's anything between $3 to $3.50 per 1,000 scuff. But these are guys, they're all privately owned entities. I mean, many of them are listed on stock exchanges, but this is for gas. You must remember, or we must just remind ourselves that also in the US you get oil. You get oil from shales as well. So there's also the oil shale issue with production coming from that. So a company might have a balanced portfolio to keep it going, but the gas is currently, I think, in many cases, sub-commercial.
But apart from the current economics, the exploitable portion of gas in the United States, is that still got a fairly long lifetime, particularly if the prices were to go up?
No, that shows itself definitely as, I mean, 15 to 20 years. No, that is. I mean, just a comment on gas. Here in England, here in the UK, people were up in arms on the one side, but so excited when the first gas was delivered to Scotland on a permanent basis. So we've got these big tankers that they're full with gas outside Houston and Galveston, and it just sails on a regular basis, and it delivers surplus US gas at a more competitive price, because here in the UK we're stuck between the gas that comes from Europe or where they can get cheaper gas, and US shale gas being shipped across the ocean has come in and assisting me to turn on my gas app when I go for my tea quite soon.
Okay. Right. Yeah. I think Gert and John and Jock and Charles, I mean, what comes out of all this, and I guess that's what institutions like Aon are involved with, is that, you know, it's still very early days. There's some interesting work being done, but there needs to be a whole lot more work done on, you know, shale gas, fracking, etc. in this country. You know, I think we're in a very early infancy stage. And then, you know, Jock's comment has probably also got relevance that, you know, do you have long enough to go through all the hoops and the testing before other technologies take over? Anyway, any further questions? So thanks, John. Thanks very much for your presentation and all the work that went into it. And again, thanks for everyone that attended. Once again, it was a tremendous turnout of people, and thanks for, you know, the questions and discussions, which is probably some of the most important part of the whole process. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Gert, for running the show, and we look forward to the next presentation and people's attendance again. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.